or welcome back to my channel. So in this video I'm going to be talking about revision notes and how I made mine throughout sixth form. So this is actually all of my revision notes from throughout sixth form. This is just sort of an ARC notebook, slightly edited to suit what I needed it to be. It doesn't really matter obviously how you store them, that's just what I like to use. I found this very practical, and this came with me to school nearly every single day. So if there's one thing that you can take from this video, make it be this. Make your revision notes as you go along, whether that's at the end of each topic or after every single lesson. You need to do it as you go along. You just don't have time at the end to go back to the beginning and start from scratch. So I had two sets of revision notes. I had a much longer, more detailed set, which I did make after every single lesson, and then a much shorter, snappier summary of everything you needed to know, which I would make at the end of every topic. So I'm going to start by talking about the extremely summarised version. So again, I just keep these in here, with all of my others actually. I keep all of them in there, but they are extremely short. All of my A-level chemistry summarised notes made 15 pages in total, so it was really quick to go through before an exam or anything like that, which I found absolutely perfect. Sorry if I'm looking down, I've got my iPad down here. So yeah, I use these mainly for last minute revision, and these I'd basically be able to recount word for word in an exam, and it's the sort of thing that they might require, so it covered things like definitions and that sort of thing, and the really sort of backbone of the course. If you do chemistry, a bit like a skeletal formula, you can sort of expand it to show everything else, but on its own it just shows the absolute main details. So the way I made these was predominantly from the spec, so I would literally have that in front of me. Every point from the spec would be about a bullet point. Obviously I'd changed it into my own words, and obviously some of the points on the spec don't really explain what they're actually talking about, so it would be obviously in context, and I found that making these, especially from the spec, meant that you had to really understand the topic, because you had to understand exactly what it was referring to. So by doing this, it does cover everything, just in minimal detail. And what you want is by the end of your revision to be able to sort of mentally expand these into the longer revision notes, which I'll talk about later. I also made these really summarised revision notes into flashcards, just for a bit of a change, and obviously it's quite quick, and I'd usually have about one flashcard per topic, which just again had these bullet points on, so I'd look at the front of it, go, okay, what do I know about NMR, and then I'd be able to recount the back, and that helped me to memorise it. So my longer set of revision notes, as I think I mentioned earlier, I made these after every single lesson. So I would come home, ideally on the same day, and I would read through everything we did in class and type it up in my own words, because I found that it made me have to read everything over again, and obviously changing it into your own words means that you have to understand it, so it means that as you go along you're aware if there's a particular topic you don't understand, so you can ask for help, get some extra practice questions, do whatever you need to do as you go along, so you don't realise at the end when you're trying to revise for your exam that actually you never understood circular motion, as a bit of a random example. So these are much longer and more detailed, and they explain the concepts, not just have sort of the more formal definitions and that sort of thing that are in the summarised notes, although these longer notes should effectively contain the summarised notes as well. So I like to use these while I was first learning a topic in particular, because you do want to know the detail, it's just at the last minute you don't want to have to learn it again from scratch. So I wouldn't know these word for word, but I'd know the general gist of the whole thing, if that makes any sense. So periodically reading through these is extremely helpful for trying to make sure that you can explain these concepts. As you may know, I did all sciences and maths at A-level, so I don't know if this would work for arts, but it just, yeah, it meant that the concepts I could explain better because I was reading something explaining them, if that makes any sense. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of what my notes look like. So as I said, I just keep them in this notebook sort of thing, I literally just have some dividers from Sainsbury's, which I then hole punched so they fit in here. It's really not very fancy, it's just to keep them all together, and I found this much easier to carry around than in a typical folder. So I made all of my notes on the computer, just on Word, because I found if I handwrote things, I would just comment on my handwriting because I hate my handwriting, rather than actually learning what it said. So although it's probably more effective for learning purposes, I found for me it wasn't for that reason. So this is just what they look like. So they're quite basic. You could go through and highlight them if you wanted to. I preferred not to. I find I get quite distracted if things are too colourful. So yeah, I just kept them in 2 colours. So yeah, black and blue. Very exciting. But yeah, just your basic Word formatting. And actually I do have these for sale online if anyone's interested. I'll link them in the description. And then this is an example of my summarised ones, and my longer ones look very, very similar, although obviously it is a little bit longer. I guess technically slightly more colourful. I have black and purple rather than blue. But yeah, all of mine look pretty similar to this. The only other thing really is for maths I didn't have the extra summarised version because obviously there's less to learn. Instead I just had a list of proofs and formulae to learn, which not very exciting, but needed to be done. So that pretty much covers how I made my notes throughout sixth form. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments or DM me on Instagram, and I hope to see you soon. Bye!